Tennessee went out and added a deep threat to couple with superstar quarterback commit George MacIntyre. Joakim Dodson out of Memphis. He committed to Tennessee on Saturday. He's a speedster that jumped on board early. We're going to talk about that and the other elite in-state wide receivers that Tennessee is recruiting. And we'll also get an update on five-star offensive tackle David Sanders. But first, Tennessee fans, do me a favor. Hit subscribe. A new offseason, same channel. Hit subscribe for me. All right, let's bring on Matt Ray from Volquest. And Matt, we're going to talk about these in-state wide receivers. Obviously, Joakim Dodson, big addition on Saturday. But you also got Darius Jackson, who's out of Memphis, and Cameron Sparks from Chattanooga. So let's start with Darius Jackson, four-star prospect. Where does Tennessee sit there?
Yeah, Josh, I think it's still relatively early in Darius Jackson's process, but I think, him being out here in the fall, having a chance to see the game day atmosphere, and Tennessee has prioritized him since. I think, in his first update, Charles Power rated him as a four-star, and I think Darius Jackson has the ceiling to climb even higher. And you've seen Tennessee prioritize him as a guy in this class that they feel like can do multiple things inside of their offense. And I think right now, we'll see where things go as Darius Jackson hits the road here in the spring. He'll be back at Tennessee at some point for spring practice. But I think the Vols sit in a pretty good spot here early on.
All right, now let's move down to Chattanooga where we got Cameron Sparks. Has he been a recruiting target of George MacIntyre's?
Yeah, absolutely. These two guys have a long-standing relationship through basketball that goes all the way back to elementary school. They play 7-on-7 football together. They're gonna play together this spring. I talked to Cameron Sparks shortly after George MacIntyre committed. I think that was probably one of the first people that he reached out to. And George MacIntyre's working the recruiting trail extremely hard right now for Tennessee. And it's not just wide receivers, it's offensive linemen, it's safeties. We were in North Carolina this past week at Monroe High School, home of Jordan Young, the top athlete in the 2024 On3 rankings. And one of the things he brought up to me was like, hey, George MacIntyre's my guy. It was kind of funny to hear that, from a safety. But, Cameron Sparks and George MacIntyre, they go way back, and there's a long-standing relationship between those two.
Which of the in-state wide receivers could be a Tennessee Volunteer commit next? Who do you think's closest to pulling that trigger?
That's a tough question, Josh, because in talking to Cameron Sparks and Darius Jackson, I think they both have similar timelines right now. Now, obviously, for Cameron Sparks, he's been visiting Tennessee for the better part of 3 years. So how fast is his process, pick up speed? How fast, does he want to see this start to get done once he gets back out and sees multiple schools in the spring and potentially spring games? I don't know. I still think I lean toward a summertime decision for both of those guys.
All right. Now, when it comes to the wide receiver board in general, who would you consider Tennessee's top wide receiver target that's not from the state of Tennessee? Would it be Caleb Cunningham, the five-star from Mississippi?
I think Tennessee's really high on Caleb Cunningham. They've prioritized him since he was able to make it to campus back in November. I think they really like Jamie French, and they're trying really hard to be involved there. He told us earlier in January that, Tennessee was top 5 for him, but he's got to get to campus,
Right.
at some point, supposed to in the spring. And then Marcus Harris from California Mater Dei was here back in January for the kind of semi-canceled junior day that some of the kids from out of town were still able to make it in. Marcus Harris was one of those, and Tennessee likes him a good bit as well. So I think really it probably starts with Caleb Cunningham and Jamie French and then Marcus Harris. And I think a guy like Malik Clark, who Tennessee has yet to offer but has kept very close tabs on, could end up and play for them as well.
All right. It wouldn't be a Tennessee recruiting segment without some David Sanders talk. And you guys at Volquest did a great job. You were in North Carolina, sat down with David Sanders at his high school. Great interview. You guys should all go check that out. It sounds to me, and I know David Sanders hasn't narrowed his list yet, but I think Tennessee is a lock to be in whatever it is, a top 10, a top 5, a top 3. I think Tennessee will be there when he narrows his list. But to you, Matt, who do you think is Tennessee's biggest competition right now for David Sanders?
Right now, Josh, I would say that it's Clemson and Georgia. And, I think David Sanders is genuinely intrigued by Georgia, but I think right now, Tennessee and Clemson have positioned themselves the best heading into a big slate of spring visits and then summertime official visits. He was at Clemson for junior day. I think that went very well. He was one of the guys that semi-canceled junior day that I mentioned. He wasn't able to make it to town because of the weather. But that didn't seem to hinder Tennessee at all with David Sanders. If you go watch that interview, I mean, you can tell that David Sanders is very interested in Tennessee. He's very detailed into the
Very deep.
process and how he's looking at the balls from graduate assistants inside the offensive line room all the way up to Josh Heupel and the guys coming in this 2024 class. So I think Tennessee certainly has David Sanders' interest right now. Another guy, a really close relationship with George MacIntyre. So I think Tennessee's trying to compound some things and build momentum going into the spring for David Sanders.
Yeah, and I know we're only, like 2 months away, 2.5 months away from Jordan Seaton picking Colorado over Tennessee. So, these offensive tackle recruitments, I know it's hard for Tennessee fans to really get too excited here, but is this one that is shaping up to be one of these recruitments for Tennessee fans where this is like the recruitment of the offseason?
Oh, it absolutely, I think, is the recruitment of the offseason for Tennessee fans. And if you look back over the last few cycles, Tennessee was heavily involved with Francis Mauigoa, who ended up picking Miami in the end. They were heavily involved with Jordan Seaton, as you said. They were heavily involved with Lucas Simmons. They were able to land Bennett Warren last cycle,
Yep.
over Michigan. But, at the same time, this is that big time eyes on nationally recruitment that everyone's focused on. And this is the guy that Tennessee fans want in the boat more than anybody right now.
It is, and we're going to keep talking about him all offseason until he makes that decision. So, Matt Ray from Volquest, thank you for coming on the Inside Scoop on another big weekend for Tennessee recruiting.
Yeah, Josh, thanks for having me as always.